Okay, and we're live. Good afternoon. How are you? Welcome to another e-learning session powered by Ariva Academy. So, welcome to the HR Virtual Summit PH 2020 Bounce Back HR. Sharpen the resilience for the new normal world of work. So, this is the afternoon session of our second series. So, our topic for today is HR leadership in a time of crisis, and we have invited a world-renowned guru and a global thought leader. Later, you'll got to meet him. But of course, my name is Irish Malonda, and I'll be your host. And with me is Mr. Howell Mabalot as my co-host and moderator. So we'll just wait for him to go to log in our Zoom. But before that, please allow me to greet first our out of the country participants. Thank you for joining us. Our participants from Australia, India, Indonesia, Malaysia, Singapore, and United States. Thank you for joining us today. And moving on, in order for us to have a smooth flow of our e-learning session, here are some few reminders and house rules. For those of you who are their first time attending our webinar, please type in a chat tab, hi. So type in now. Let me see the first timers here. Okay, Maria Andrea Banay. Who else? Maria Lanilin Licanda. Okay, for the others naman, just greet the panelists, the speakers, and the co participants. So good afternoon. We wanted to know that you can hear us loud and clear. So you will be needing a good quality headset and use this following codes. So 111 to show that you can hear us. 222 means that you can hear us. 2121 means the sound is breaking or there's a log. And question mark if you don't understand anything. Okay, I can see 3-1, so meaning we're loud and clear and audible. Next. Okay, so we will be having a quick break later after the presentation of our guest speaker, 2 to 3 minute break, before we move on to our question and answer. So for the question and answer guidelines, participants' microphones will be temporarily disabled by the administrator during discussion to avoid interruptions. Questions will be entertained after each topic of the session. For questions and clarifications during the provided time after each topic, please click the raise button for the administrator to enable the microphone for live questions. Type in your questions at the Q&A box, again, at the Q&A box, not in the chat box. One question at a time will be entertained. For comments and feedback, please scan this QR code. This will be directed to our feedback form. Kindly send us your comments, suggestions, ideas, topics to discuss for us to improve our future e-learning session. And now, to discuss HR leadership in time of crisis, we have invited the Managing Director, Strategy Focus Group-DWC, a faculty partner in Human Capital Institute, a global thought leader. Let us all welcome Mr. Ron Thomas. Hello, Sir Ron.
Yes, good morning, everyone. Let me just get my video up here. Good morning. So excited to be here. I said earlier that it's always good for me to interact with the Philippines because I'm there quite a bit. I think I was there 5 or 6 times last year. I love the country, don't love the traffic, but it's the country is great. So it's great for me to be here. I'm based out of Dubai, and we're going to spend some time this morning talking through what we're all going through, possibly from 3 angles: from HR leadership perspective, from employees perspective, as well as non-HR leaders, because we're all going to play a role in trying to get back to the new normal. I think, Irish, you mentioned the new normal. What is that going to look like? Nobody knows. Mm-hmm. But we have time now to give some thought to these type topics that we're going to talk about, specifically from a leadership perspective. as we try and figure out what and how our our companies are going to try and get back on track. A lot of them are not getting back on track. I tend to, and anyone who's interacted with me in any of my sessions, one of the first or second questions I ask, specifically for HR people, is how many of you read the business news every day? And the other follow-up to that is that how many of you are part of your industry association? Those two angles are extremely important today. Because number one, your business section of your newspaper is a primer in crisis, specifically today. So how do you stay on top of that? How do you get in shape? I've seen posts online, people talking about working from home and the dilemmas of working from home, eating too much, not exercising enough. How are you going to stay fit from a physical perspective? So I want this session to talk about how are you going to get fit for the next version of your career or non-career. I know a lot of people in human resources have been hit. By hit, I think you know what I mean. How are you going to get back on track? You have a lot of time. You're working from home. Use that time wisely because no one knows how this is going to end up. I'm not a guru that's going to be able to give you a clear-cut path to what's going to happen, but I can share with you what I'm doing to get prepared for the new normal. Educating myself every day. I'm still exercising. I'm working on the mind as also working on my profession and to try and make sure that I'm prepared for whatever version pops up. So I'm going to click over and share my screen. So we can get started. And the title of our session today is HR Leadership in a Time of Crisis. Now, this doesn't mean if I was doing something for marketing or finance, operations, facilities, that we possibly would be discussing some of the same topics, but you have to realize our role inside of an organization is based on being an expert around people dynamics. That's what we were hired for. So we're the people experts, finance, financial experts, marketing experts. But ours is going to take on a new dynamic moving forward because we're going to have to figure out what this new model is going to look like. We've had so many, I call it the winds of change that we're facing. It's like walking into a sandstorm. And how are we going to prepare once this sandstorm tends to subside, as much as that will be? And what are we going to look like? How are we going to guide as leaders and people experts? And I say people experts because that comes back to influencing. Lots of times people in our profession will not so much brand themselves as people experts, but that's what human resources, the profession, is about. I get into very spirited discussions with senior leaders as we discuss the value of an HR department, if you would unleash them to do what they're prepared to do. But so many times we're pigeonholed into a process-driven perspective, and we're excellent process executors, but we don't get an opportunity to move beyond that. So I'll say to you, even if your job is process-driven, you're going to have to use this time to upskill. And if you were fortunate enough to still have a job, you're going to have to use this time to upskill. If you were not fortunate and you're currently unemployed in human resources or any profession, your main goal should be, how am I going to get back on track? How am I going to upskill myself for the new normal, the new skills that are going to be needed? Because that's on us. And how we prepare to do that is going to be driven by us. I always tell people, when we worry about AI and robotics and logistics centers and all these type things, what's happening is that the HR profession is the same. General Electric optimized 85% of their workforce processes. So what happens to human resources? So I say we're going to have to upskill, because even if you're not doing it now, what's going to eventually happen is that your company or companies will be making changes moving forward for a whole host of reasons that we won't even go into. But I'm concerned about your skill set and how you're going to prepare yourself for this next level of HR leadership. Think of current state, future state. What skills will be needed in trying to guide your organizations through this next level? So I want to pull this slide up for a second, because I tend to go through the newspapers every day to see what's happening. And here's what came up this morning. I was glancing through airline seating arrangements and the impact that's going to have as it relates to social distancing. So if you think of a seating arrangement with 3 seats across, that may be 1 blank seat and 1 seat. That's going to will severely enhance their revenue model, which would possibly mean higher airfares. If you're in the hospitality business, that could have some impact. Everything that's listed here, I won't go through them all, will have an impact inside of an organization. There was some band last night that had a performance online. They were scheduled to be in USA. They had 5 venues they were going to perform. They did their concert online and they had 10 million views. Wow. If you're in the business of events, that's going to have some impact. So every one of these has impact inside of your organization. And we, being the people expert, align, and this is a collaborative effort, align with other leaders in the company, we have to be prepared. You know, we hear the discussion about having a seat at the table, which I absolutely despise that statement. But going forward, it's imperative that we have that seat, that we understand this new business model, because the repercussions is going to come back inside of our organizations. And how are we going to guide that? The organization, you have your workforce, is going through massive mindset shifts, working from home. They're afraid of the future. Rumors are percolating all over. Will we be able to work from home post-virus? I did a session out of Saudi Arabia first part of the week, and someone on the call said that their organization has been adamant against working from home. Now they are working from home. What is the employee expectations moving forward? Will I lose my job once I get back? I'm so stressed on all these online meetings. I don't even want to begin to count how many online meetings I've had this week, as well as a webinar, which was a learning series over 3 days, 7 days a week of talking into this medium. The training industry has been upended. What is that going to look like? So everything that we talk about, or everything you face, everyone is going through the same thing, trying to figure out what's the new normal, how are things going to change as a result of that. So when I do leadership development, it's kind of based on a model of how we're looking at global mega trends, looking at implications of leaders in current state and going into future state. And I tend to add some more, because leaders, from the challenge we're going through from the previous slide of what your workers or your team is going through, understanding and engaging in people, transparent communication, having these weekly wellness calls, or whatever you would want to brand it as. How are you building relationships with your team virtually? Managing a team virtually is totally different from managing a team in-house. Do you have those skill sets? What are you doing to develop those skill sets? Have you taken a skills inventory as to what you are going to need moving forward? Leading with agility. Agility is another word. Agile is a word that tends to cause my eyes to roll, because it comes out in basically every article. Agile approach to this, that, and the other. In other words, can you stop on a dime and change it? Can you do a weave and move into a different direction? That's what that's talking about. The normality of just going and doing that and punching the clock and going through your normal daily routine, that's going to be upended the same way you're upended sitting at home or wherever you're sitting, carrying out what you're going through. In Dubai, we're on 24-hour lockdown. To go outside, we literally have to go online and ask for a permit. And that permit will only be granted every 3 days. So strategically, you have to plan your week. That permit will only be granted for grocery stores, pharmacies, and if you are an essential worker. The last bullet point says the essential worker is the new strategic workforce. Now, you know, strategic workforce planning, one of the keys to that as it starts is defining the critical role. And normally that was strategically driven. Well, there's a new sheriff in town, and that's the essential worker, who's going to play a huge role in moving forward. If we look back at global megatrends, we'll cover those in a little bit more in the next slide. Technology, Zoom meetings, GoToMeetings, Cisco webinars, it goes on and on. There's Slack, there's Facebook for work. What model are you going to incorporate into your business? I was on a call last night with some people from the Asia Pacific region, and they said that their bank would not allow them to use Zoom. They can't download it on the platforms they're using, on their technology. How's all this going to play out? If you're recruiting people, what's going to be your mode of operation moving forward? Are you now going to move into video interviewing? And how is that going to work? How is that going to enable you to gauge a level of talent when they're sitting in front of you? So technology is going to play a huge role going forward. One of the key points that as I've listened to these updates across the world, they talk about the modeling. They talk about the modeling of this virus. And I'm thinking of modeling of a workforce. What is the workforce model going to look like? The Phase 1 plan for Dubai opening the mall came out this morning. I'm reading through that. 30% capacity. Each person is allowed 3 hours. How would that affect a workplace if we designed a model for what it's going to look like when we open our buildings back up? See, all of these things that are happening outside in other industries that we see in the newspaper is going to come back into our lap. Give some time now to start thinking through, what is the new version going to look like? Employees' expectations are changing. They're working from home. They're getting work done. I was on a call earlier this week, and someone says, well, how do we punish people if they're not working? And my thought was, why is that a major concern at this point? If you have one person that's acting out, that's a one-on-one issue. That's not a policy issue. Spend time, not from a punitive perspective, spend time from an engaging perspective. Everyone's gone through a lot. We'll have time to deal with that. But I don't think that should bubble up, that would be the key point that we're going to be concerning ourselves with. What is the new model going to look like? If your industry is severely impacted, what is that new model going to look like? If you're in the hospitality business, if you're in the airline business, what is that going to look like? And this is where the term modeling came up that I was so intrigued by. Because if you're into data and analytics, the solutioning is based on modeling. You know, you plug in independent variables, and based on that, the formulas or the results of those formulas, when it comes out, it gives you a higher probability of whatever that solution is. Data will play a key role in doing this. So one of the things we'll talk about at the back end of my presentation is, how do you model all of the challenges and changes that are going through? And we'll use a marketing technique. I'll talk about a marketing technique. You can do the research on your own, but it's the same technique that you can use. Marketing has great tools, customer experience, employee experience. It's all the same. It's just that the dynamic has changed. The business environment, this comes back to your industry. If you're banking, how is that going to look if your strategy was to become a cloud bank? That may be speeded up. I was looking at data points behind retail. There's a market penetration of e-commerce was on average around 25% pre-virus. It has now reached 45%. And if you're in the e-commerce business, you're hot at the moment. If you're in the retail industry, you're not so much. Two contrasting industry, one is current state, one is future state. Crisis management. What is our plan? Have we put together a plan to move forward? When I read through the Dubai business transition, the new model, once it opens back up, I'm looking at the way that it was laid out, all the key points that was talked about. And we were talking this morning in the office here as that we could possibly take that and repurpose it, because they basically thought through every step from a crisis management, post-management perspective. So these are the kind of things that we are going to have to stay abreast of what's going on. I've always said, ever so often, you've got to come up for air. And what I mean by that is coming up for air to see what's happening outside of your industry, to see what's happening with your competitors, and you follow the business news. Because when I ask that question, how many of you follow the business news, I get kind of a blank HR look. When I ask the question around your industry newsletter, or are you a part of that, I get kind of the blank HR look. And I don't think I need to describe to you what that looks like. I think you know what that looks like. You're going to have to understand from a business perspective. One of the things I've always looked at in growing my career, and I've been in HR coming close to 20 years, is that I've always tried to be positioned as a business person that just happened to sit in human resources. I have a slide at the back end of my presentation, Starbucks. We're in the people business, but we just happen to serve coffee. The business person's mindset can create an audience, or you will be accepted into that audience. If you're the outside person that's trying to enter into a business mindset, you might not be perceived from a branding issue as a kind of a strategic person. So spend some time getting fit for the new normal whenever that comes through. My quote here says, there will be leaders who will emerge out of a crisis like this. That's a branding issue, stepping up to the plate. What are you thinking about? Can you put a plan together? As I said, our profession is being upended. I always like to cover this slide because I think people in our profession need time to time, just go back and take a look at this. This is the SHRM Competency Model. If you look at this, there's 9 slices of the pie, and there's only one that's based on what we do. If you're process focused, HR expertise. But everything outside of that is needed in your organization today. Self-check, where am I? Consultation skills. Am I able to build strong relationship throughout my organization? Can I navigate leadership? Do I have influence to sit in those meetings? How many of you are sitting in the business meetings? It is imperative moving forward that you sit in the business meetings because you're going to get an unvarnished view of what's happening in your organization. And how you're going to do that, that's going to be up to you. But you're going to have to make the business case as to why you're needed. You're the people experts inside of the organization. You have to be in that meeting going forward. Critical evaluation. How do you do one-on-one interviews? How do you set up focus groups? How do you evaluate an issue inside of your organization? How do you evaluate this crisis? How can you create a journey map which walks you through from the beginning of the announcement to the day you close down, the wellness calls, communication strategy, what happened during that period, document everything. Because these will serve as kind of notes to build a strategic initiative moving forward. but you must understand what you have gone through to be able to do that. Here's a very famous quote. In other words, what got you in a certain position will not get you to the next one. Do not repeat the same tactics that you've gained in one victory. So you may have been there, were successful. Well, to move into the future focus, you're going to have to build upon that. You're going to have to build and exercise some new muscles to move it to the next area. 4 areas of leadership development. I've been kind of talking through this. Where are you now? If you look back at the SHRM Competency Model, how fluent are you in each category? And if you go to their site, it best explains what that is under each category. How fluent are you? If you had to do a readiness assessment and you graded yourself as a 4-point rater, where would you fall in those areas? Because the other 8 areas are going to be needed post-virus. Immerse yourself in the future. What is the future going to look like? Nobody knows that. And anyone tells you, you log onto this webinar, we're going to give you an inside peek into the future. They don't know that. They are trying to assume based on everything they've read. So this is why my mornings start with scanning the business news, reading through the concert that had 10 million viewers. I'm wondering, if I was in the event business, this could have a severe impact because maybe I had 50 events scheduled next year or the remainder of this year. What happens if this moves into a new area? Do we create a business model that you can log on to our platform and now we can do everything from here, signing up people, taking revenue and taking prices and all of that? We may not have it now, but that's a possibility. What's going to happen in the future of the new business model? Your business as it stands now is going to change. And you're going to have to understand what that is. Now, there's a technique we use in strategic workforce planning around scenario planning. And scenario planning is based on what if this happens? What if this happens? If this happens, we're going to do 1, 2, 3. If that happens, we're going to do 1, 2, 3. And these are kind of, this is the process people use to try and figure out or get a better understanding, a clear insight as to what that may look like. Is it foolproof? No, it's not foolproof. Think of Kodak. Think of Nokia. Great companies at one time, but did not do quite a great job as it related to scenario planning. Or maybe they placed their bets in the wrong bucket. Reflecting back on your own leadership journey. Anytime you hear someone say, I'm a great leader, be suspect. That's self-anointed. How do you determine whether you're a great leader? The people that report to you will tell you that. They may not tell you that verbally, but they give you inclinations that they feel that you're a great leader. They're the only people can mark you as that. And with social media, sometimes I look on LinkedIn, everybody's a guru, there's a ninja, and all these kinds of things, and on and on and on. And I'm like, where did I get these titles from? I mean, somebody said, you are now anointed as the great guru leader, innovative thinker, out of the box, metal, whatever it is. Self-congratulatory, yes. But your people are going to determine that. Look to see whether what the prior quote said, leaders will emerge from this crisis. Are you feeling comfortable thinking about the future? The slides show that everyone is talking to you, is having a conversation, could be about current content, but mentally they could be someplace else. Do you have that relationship that you could say, is everything okay? Are you building relationships with your people? That's always a good sign of this so-called leadership journey, because if you have, people will call you and say, here's what I'm struggling with. But if your people don't feel open to talk to you, you're going to have a tougher time once the model gets back on track or whatever that new model comes to. Return to the present, scale to the future. Where are we now? What does the future look like? What are those gaps that are going to be needed to move forward? People need to know the leaders care for the employees and understand what they're going through. I have some, because I know so many HR leaders in your country, I have some people here that I consider as really, really great leaders because they care for the employees. I was with a group of your people in the leadership's World HRD Congress in February. And it was a great time to talk with leaders. Darwin was there, Marvin was there, Ivy was supposed to be there, she didn't make it. Great leaders that are exhibiting the kind of traits that people will want to emulate, your team members will want to emulate over a period of time. So think of your future and your development moving forward. If you're already a leader, what's the 2.0 version of your leadership style and moving forward? Here are the three futures I think that HR is going to have to address. What is the workplace going to look like? What is the future of the enterprise? In other words, we're in this industry. What is this industry going to look like in the future? And your employees, how is work going to get done post-virus? What is going to be the lead-in? What policies are in place? Have we begun the process of thinking through that? This is why when I saw that model that the Dubai government put out this morning, I said, excellent, the way that they sketched it out. There was nothing to leave for guesswork because they basically thought through everything. Now, I say that to say, if you follow other industries and you read and see what's happening, you can always pick up ideas. Come out of the bubble. I say come up and for air from time to time. And you'd be surprised what other techniques people are using to try and either do from scenario planning or trying to figure out what this future is going to look like, moving forward. The future is going to demand a new human resources. Even if you were strategically driven, you're going to become more strategically driven. If the brand of your HR department was process driven, you're really going to have to step up to the plate. Because what happens when that big meeting comes around and all of the key players are in the room, what is your presentation or your strategy is going to look like? You're sitting at the table, IT, marketing, finance, operations, business development, and everyone's talking post-virus strategy. What is HR's post-virus strategy? Take some time now and start thinking through that. The slide that says 1 through 8 that I started with, that's kind of an excellent starting point. My mother had this favorite saying, the journey of 1,000 miles begins with one step. Take one step now and start working on this. There's no need of waiting till you get back into the office and then it starts. Start collaborating now. Start calling key leaders inside of your organization. If you're process driven, think about your work. How will this change? How could you speed up this process? Everyone can play a role because you're going to have to change your influence as people experts, that people see you as a credible source of a strategic vantage point for human resources. So the version of you is going to have to change moving forward. So here's the big day, post-virus, in 2 months. Leadership, hands-on meeting, everyone's in the room. What are you going to say? What are you going to talk about? Because what you talk about is going to intertwine technology, it's going to intertwine with marketing, it's going to intertwine with possibly finance, operating strategy, business model, everything. What are you going to talk about? How are you going to explain the role that you're going to play in moving forward? What is your scenario planning? If you were scenario planning with business development and all these other teams here, what are you extracting from each one of those that is aligned to some people-centric inside? And that's where it's going to come into play. Because the big day, the big room, everyone's going, are you going to nail it? Or are you going to get there and you're going to talk HR talk? HR talk means that nobody else in the room understands what you're talking about. Because you're using HR terms. You didn't focus from a business lens. Remember, Try and be seen as a business person who just happens to sit in human resources. Do you understand the financials? Do you understand the shortfalls? Do you understand the marketing dynamics that's moving forward? Do you understand the technology strategy moving forward? How do you find that out? You talk to somebody in those areas. You begin having those conversations now. Those are going to be important, specifically if you're in leadership. But everyone's going to play a role, even if you're in process. Will your process, what you're focusing on every day, is that going to change going forward? What role are you going to play? Start thinking about it now. The last slide I have later in this morning talks to the learning journey. And sometimes we take a learning event as a one-off. We go to a training for 2-3 days and we come back to our work. And we spent 3 days immersed in something and we don't bring any of that back. So I've always said, if you were sitting through any learning, what is the takeaway? How can I immerse that into Monday morning? Not a physical Monday morning, but I'm thinking, how am I going to immerse this conversation back into Monday morning? What am I going to think about? What am I going to work on when this closes out? And Monday, pulling my team together or analyzing the work I'm doing to see future scenario and the way that may look. Your organization is going to be hungry for it. Whether you're a leader, whether you're in a specific function and you're just process, everyone's going to play a role. So if anyone's on a call from finance, marketing, technology, operating, all of this is going to come into play. Future of how work gets done. What is the scenario moving forward? Future focus, the enterprise future focus. Will our model change? Neiman Marcus, very famous high-end store in the US, filed for bankruptcy on Monday. And as I'm reading through the article basically summed it up. It's the tip of the iceberg. Macy's closed 200 and some stores back in January. So if you're in brick and mortar retail business, it doesn't take a PhD to figure out that future focus will not be basically as a centered around that store and people coming into that store. You're not going to be able to change that. So how are you going to prepare your organization or prepare yourself if you've been store focused into an e-commerce side? This is why learning and development is now rising to the top inside of organization, because if the challenge or the strategic initiatives is driven by a digital approach, e-commerce approach, a new business model. If you look at your training portfolio of people here in training, are your offerings aligned to that challenge? There was a very interesting case study that American Express went through, and it basically tore down and restructured their entire human resource training department because they realized that all they had was training courses. It was not aligned to the weaknesses of the organization. It was not aligned to the opportunities of the organization. It was not aligned to the threats of an organization. That was a SWOT approach I just used. So they had to make sure all of their offerings, for the most part, were connected to some issue that was challenging their organization. SWOT analysis, I mentioned. SWOT analysis is a great way to analyze marketing, finance, operations, facilities. If you're sitting inside of, as an HR VP in one of those areas, start using a SWOT approach. Put your people through a SWOT exercise to diagnose that particular department or work stream or whatever it is. What is the new design going to look like moving forward? I saw that, well, it's got the word here, agile, which is kind of a buzzword, but think of flexible, being flexible. The plan that you may be thinking about or working on for this revised business strategy should be a model. And the model means that it will be disrupted, but it's built for disruption. And we consistently monitor. If you look at designs of models, whether that be a recruiting model, whether that be a consulting model. There's used to be at one time when any model was designed, the last stepping stone was always the so-called the end. Well, there's no end anymore for anything. There is a stopgap measure called monitor and evaluate, and you go back to the drawing boards again. And that's kind of the theory that's based on design thinking, is you continually go back, you get feedback. Why do you think your phones, or every time you open them up, some app says it needs to be updated? Because they monitored, they evaluated, and they knew there were issues, and they consistently go back and update it. HR Levers talks to engagement, performance. If you increase the level of performance, if you increase the level of engagement, can you link it to a business outcome? Take a business approach to taking the HR levers and walking your leadership through what it's going to mean for the organization, because that's all they're concerned about. What is it going to mean for the organization, in moving forward? What is that business outcome going to look like? I'm not talking about revenue. I'm not talking about if you tweak this, we're going to get 15% more in revenue, because any financial person in the room would shut you down in a heartbeat. Because from a statistical perspective, you can't say it's just one thing, because there's a lot of independent variables that would go into that. So here it comes again. Is your organization fit for the future? I'm going to throw organization and yourself. Are you fit for the future? What are you doing to work out every day? I'm not talking about a physical workout, which you should be doing. I'm kind of a gym person. I'm at the gym every morning. Now I can't go to the gym because the gym is closed. So what do? I get up, I walk upstairs with 7 stories. I go up, down, 3 times in the morning, 3 times in the afternoon, trying to stay fit. Fit for the future, for physical, for organization, for your career. How are you staying fit? In this online world of Zoom meetings, Cisco webinars, and on and on. This is my last one for the week, by the way, so I can relax after the session today. But it's caused me to say, I need a new set of skills. I recorded something yesterday. I looked back at it, and it wasn't great. So what did I do? I sent it to a friend of mine who's a TV newscaster, a big shot in the U.S., and I said, I need to ask your help to coach me through this, because I didn't like the way it looked. How can I become better fit for video? So there's always areas, if we assess ourselves and look at it and be honest with ourselves, I need to get better at this. I need to get better for my organization. I need to get better for me and my future. So this does not only fit into the organization perspective, fit for the future. What does that mean for me, my organization, my department? Over the 3-prong that we talked about earlier. Future, formal strategies to respond to this. What is that going to look like? When the big meeting is called, everybody goes in the room. What is yours going to look like? Business continuity plans. They're working on them now. You need to be in that room, or you need to be on those calls. Because whatever happens, and I'm speaking from an HR leader's perspective, because whatever happens or determines or retrenchment, you're going to have to carry out some portions of that. So the better I can get some insights and moving into this, the better off I'm going to be. How are we communicating throughout? I was vice president of human resources during the time that my former CEO, Martha Stewart, went to jail. Imagine you're an HR vice president of human resources and your CEO goes to jail. What do you do? What do you talk about? There's no manual to say, let's see, what do I do when my CEO goes to jail? Step 1, step 2, step 3. There was nothing. We had to create it. But I listened to people, and people said, we need to know what's happening inside of the company. We need you guys to communicate more. So there's something that's called getting close to the problem, a challenge. Closest to the problem were the employees who possibly could be affected. And those are the people I said, I need your help as I design these plans. Talk to your people now to talk about what's working, what's not working. What could we change if we go into a permanent model? What could we possibly change if we were to do a hybrid model? Start trying to crowdsource ideas now. People have got some time, and listen to your employees' concern. So your role, aligning the organization, responding, communicating, arming, or enabling your workforce to get fit for the marathon that's coming up. Safe concerns are heard. People are struggling, folks. I get emails every day. I get WhatsApp messages. I get Facebook Messenger. People are struggling. Can I run this by you? We're all going through the same thing. So you're no more unique than anyone else. Think of the ones that lost their jobs. Imagine the struggle they're going through. Well, let's try and make it better for the next batch coming through, that we can provide excellent HR people leadership so that possibly this may not happen again. Who's going to act as a primary voice that goes in and that meeting, and you're going to present that HR strategy? Are you prepared to do that? Who's going to be in this change model, which I'm going to talk to, that's going to be updating the changes, tracking tools, resources, whether that be on the technology side? Are employees going to be safe? What happens if there's a breakout of the virus inside of our organization? What is the plan for that? See, there's a lot of pieces that are going through. So we can worry about the business, but the reason we're out is because of the virus. So what's the safety strategy moving forward? There's so many moving targets. Do you have all the answers? Nobody has all the answers. But I tell you what, you can monitor things that are going on, and you can see what other companies and organizations and governments are doing, and maybe create kind of a basic framework to move forward. Recruiting, I kind of mentioned that earlier. I want to go through this, and then we could possibly, Howell, maybe open up for some Q&A now, because we're covering a lot of topics, because I'm going to kind of shift, and I'm going to go from a change perspective, then I'm going to go to a employee journey kind of perspective. So let me go through this slide, and then we'll kind of open it up, because I know someone raised their hand earlier. Being flexible, workforce policies. The call earlier in the week out of Saudi Arabia, adamant against not working from home. Now people are hankering to work from home because they see they can't get it done. Leadership is softening up a little bit. You can't go back to, I need everyone back in the office, because maybe there's governance that says 30%, 30%, 30%, or whatever it would work out to. And you do split days. Who knows? We got to figure it out. Seat at the table, front and center. You're the expert now. Expert in workforce modeling, expert in people strategy, sourcing strategy. Everything is falling back in our laps. So lots of times we've been talking about having a seat at the table. Well, you know what? You have the seat now. And are you going to perform and live up to it? Safety concern, new forums. What I would be thinking about if I was in your shoes, I would create an advisory board now of a cross section of employees and managers, and we have an offline call and discuss future, discuss workforce implication, discuss technology. On that agenda, we have covered one topic a week, or whatever it is. That's the audience. Got to get as close to them as possible. This is not an HR going into the room and coming up with a policy and procedure. You have to go and ask the people that are close to it. Empathy. People feel sorry for their workmates that lost their job. A lot of them haven't gotten over that. And a lot of them is wondering whether I'm going to be next. Transparency is extremely important. Consistently communicate as to what's happening. And managers' skill set may not be strengthened around a supporting style of manager, a coaching style of manager. So maybe your learning and development focus is building some workshop around coaching skills, supporting skills, mentoring skills. That's a strategy for learning and development, because in a lot of cases, managers don't have it. And if you think I'm stretching that, there's a book out by Gallup, and the title of the book is called It's the Managers. So with that, Howell, let's open it up and see if we can talk a little bit.
Thank you so much, Sir Ron Thomas. Everybody, let's give a big hand to Sir Ron Thomas. Sir Ron, I'll be asking you the first question, and this is from our Facebook Live. If it's okay with you, sir.
Sure.
Sir, this is a colleague of ours, a member of the Ariva Speakers Bureau. She's Ma'am Vivian Fuentes. Hi, Ma'am Vivian. Hope you and your family are safe in the confines of your home. So here is her question, Sir Ron. Will work output be the main focus of performance measurement in the new world?
Later on, it will be.
Later on, it will be. But in the meantime,
in the meantime, I would focus on their well-being with kind of an overriding talking about performance, but from a perspective of what would you need from us to enable you to perform better.
Oh.
And that way, it's from an empathetic kind of way, a helping way. I want to help you to succeed. What will you need going forward to do a better job of what you're doing? There's a three-pronged approach you can always use with issues. What's working now? What's not working? And what could we do to enhance or make it work better? What ideas would you have? That's always a good starting point. But I would not stress on the performance issues at this time, because from a perspective of statistical approach, if you've got 10 people, you may have one or two low performers that are possibly struggling. And that could be for a whole host of reasons. Everybody's struggling today. So work performance is important. And I know we need the numbers to be where they need to be. But I would more concern myself with what do you need from me? And if I have to have that coaching session with that low performer, I'm going to put the onus on me to say, what do you need from me to enable you to do a better job? And if you're struggling, don't wait until the end. Come to me and we have these conversations up front. This is where the relationship management comes back in.
Thank you, Sir Ron. Now, questions are coming in. In fact, in our program, we're supposed to pause for a 2-minute break. Will that be okay with you? Is this the last slide? Will this be the last slide of your presentation, sir?
No, I have two concepts I'm going to go into.
Okay.
And one is around change management. The other is around how do you track what you've gone through.
Okay, sir. So if you want, we can go on with the Q&A.
Okay.
Q&A, and then because we still have, or you can proceed with your presentation because we still have 12 minutes for the presentation. If that
okay, cool.
Be your
okay,
option.
And I will finish up in about that time.
Okay, sir. In the meantime, questions are piling up, and it's a good a good thing.
Always a good thing. People ask me, what do I need? What do you think I need to focus on at my next level of growth? Now, we know that organizations are facing tremendous change moving forward. Tremendous change moving forward. So my focus always comes back to two things. If you like numbers, venture more into from an analytical perspective. Not many HR people like numbers. But what we all will go through, numbers or not, is change. How do you manage change? How do you manage a new work model? How do you coach managers through this new perspective? How do you design a change plan for the initiative? You create the initiative, and as it's implemented, what change mechanisms are you going to run through? Now, this is change model agnostic because they've got quite a few on the market. But it's kind of like if I wanted to understand how to make chocolate chip cookies and I was to go online and do a search for it, I may get 10 different recipes, but the outcome, I will have a plate of chocolate chip cookies. So any model is just a recipe. And, you know, I was in conversation with Martha at one time. We were talking about recipes and she said, think of this. She said, the first time you use a recipe, it's their recipe. The next time you use it, it should be yours. And what that means is that I'm going to use that model and follow every step, implement, monitor, and evaluate. Next time around, I think this point is weak, this point is weak, this point I don't need, and then it becomes your recipe. So as I walk through this, I want you to think of this because I'm going to approach it from three perspectives that the role of human resource plays or should play in a change process. Now, the reason I'm talking about a change process and the reason I brought this up was because whatever you design has to be implemented. So if you think of sitting in a conference room and collaboratively, designing a structure, and your workforce is sitting over here with 1,000 people, how are you going to integrate that change into 1,000 people? You can't do it by sending an email anymore. There's certain processes that you're going to work through, certain steps you're going to work through. And this is what we're going to talk about. So this is going to be needed. Now, a good way to understand this, you know what, the greatest learning journey for me has always been YouTube. I don't care what it is that you need to figure. If you want to bake those chocolate chip cookies, you go to YouTube and there's a recipe for it. Change, they've got a whole slew of change videos. Some are lectures, 1-hour lectures. Take a few from a few different approaches, and I have some that's going to be listed here, and walk through those. So let's walk through. Your role, architect, you're going to design the change initiative. It says a human-centered design approach. What does that mean? That means you're going to ask your workers. Human-centered design is that I go as close to the issue as possible. If it involves your workforce, that's who I'm going to ask. Partner with the business collaboratively to ensure all categories are sitting in the room as we design this. I worked on an issue in Bangkok, and they had designed a new initiative, and the new initiative meant that the managers, every hiring manager was going to have to go through a process whenever the process came to them. At one time, it was designed to go to human resources. Human resources redesigned it to go directly to the managers. And when it went live on Monday, the managers revolted and said, we're not going to do this. You just added work to us. So as we were trying to diagnose what happens, the first question I asked was that in the design phase, guide me through who was in the room. And who was in the room? HR and the technology people who was designing it. No one went to the source. They did not use a human-centered design approach because a cross-section of those managers should have been involved in helping them to evolve this process, and they would have had that feedback. Plan for success, assessing readiness to change. Every company would possibly fail on the readiness for change now. Because if your work model is changing, you're working from home, all these thoughts are coming through. Mindsets are blocked as trying to figure this out. So extra care on the design phase, but make sure it's from a human-centered design approach. Broadcast, how are we going to broadcast this? The email announcement category is kind of on the downslope. Who's going to craft the communication strategy? Here's where collaboration comes in. If you've got a PR department, if you've got a marketing department, they have to be a part of this. Let them guide you through this because that's their expertise. One young lady told me that when she created her advisory board, she said, you know who was the most important person as we had gone through so many initiatives was the PR person, because the PR person knew communication strategy. And when they designed it, they passed it to her. She took it and she dressed it up. And she executed it out throughout the organization with some kind of communication plan. So don't try and relearn something as you're moving along. If you have this expertise, they need to be in the room as you're talking through this. What happens when this happens? The workers come to their boss and say, so what is this new initiative that human resources is talking about? And that manager says, don't even worry about it because they'll come up with something else. You know, they're always coming up with these different ideas or whatever it is. Don't even concern yourselves with it. They weren't coached. They weren't a part of the process. They weren't asked to participate in the process. So how are we going to encourage change once we implement the strategy? So we've created it, we've communicated it, now it's out into the workforce. What would be our role in using that? So maybe we do a kickoff meeting with managers. They've already been involved. We tell them about how this new thing is, and we answer all of their questions so that the people come to them asking questions. They have some semblance of a response, and they can take it forward. 3 categories of change processes: ProSci is kind of the new one on the block, 5 steps. Cotter is 8 steps. There are excellent videos on YouTube on both of these that you can use. Project Management Institute has kind of an integrated model, but that's tied into the task milestones of project management. So I'm not that familiar with that, but that could become a little complicated. But ProSci says, here are the 5 steps. And it's kind of like, I say 5 steps. What are the dependencies under each step? And working through it from that. You could have in your organization a certified change management person, because that's a specialty now. If you have that person as a part of the process. So this could be YouTube to give you some sense as to how this works. The last category, and that's probably coming into the last slide, we got about 5 minutes, is the diagnostic, called journey mapping. Journey mapping is, if you think of employees coming into your organization so they go from the candidate experience to the employee experience to exit. So what does that look like? What were the milestones in each one of those? Now that's a marketing kind of diagnostic, but it's called journey mapping the customer, but you can use it the same way. When did the first announcement go out? What are some feedback meetings that we have? When is the projected model? When was the first hands-on? What was the feedback from the hands-on? Every significant milestone we want to capture, diagnose it, what worked, what didn't work. If we did it again, how could we change it? If you begin to go through that process now, by the time this thing gets to somewhat of a normal, you are kind of prepared that you can look to see pain points, good points, and it gives you more information to talk through it and make a business case to move it forward. So it's a diagnostic tool. You can go online and search for journey mapping, and it's a great tool to use. It's a marketing technique. And clear objectives for the map, profile of persona. Persona is how should it look? What is the goal of each category? What is the target? If we want to say this is, there's an excellent case study that Airbnb used from the employee journey, and they added a candidate experience to the employee experience, and they use every touch point because they wanted to build the ideal experience the same way this is the same technique they were using for the customer experience that was renting from them. They just took the same technique and brought it into human resources. So list all the touch points, identify each element on the map, what resources you have throughout. And my closing quote, Starbucks, people business, we serve coffee, but we're in the people business serving coffee, not the coffee business serving people. Human resources going forward, we're business people, but we just happen to sit in human resources. So that means we understand business, we understand what's going on a daily basis. Today, you're gonna have to scan the business news. I don't read everything, but when I look at it and I see a headline, my thought always comes back to, if I were sitting in that room, I had to go to leaders to figure out what do we do from here? That's the exercise, the mindset shift that I go through. In doing that, mindset is going to have to shift, and it's gradual as you work through that. So continuous learning. Now my slides, it's Ariva has a copy of my deck, and you can always use it, get it, use it, whatever you can do. Continuous learning. I listed a website here that I write for called the HR Observer. I write there every week. I used to write for one in the US, but that kind of didn't work out from a contractual perspective. Harvard Business Review, Deloitte, PwC, Accenture, Korn Ferry, Mercer, World Economic Forum, great diagnostics, data points, and where it's headed. Gallup, I can't tell you enough of the information that comes down from Gallup. We are now in a continuous learning mode, and you have to get fit. And these are the barbells, these are the treadmills, and all the other things that inside of that gym that you don't go to, that you're gonna have to start using to get fit in your careers. And with that, I thank you. My deck says that if you need to contact me, my information is here. So we can go to questions now. If you wanna take a break or.
Thank you so much, Sir Juan Thomas. Again, everybody, a big hand for our valuable speaker for this afternoon. Well, that's actually lunchtime in in Dubai right now. Am I right, sir? Is it lunchtime in Dubai right now?
Yeah, it is. It's 12
Okay,
o'clock. Yeah.
so I'll hold you for another 2 minutes, Sir Ron. And then when we return, we'd like to encourage everyone to type in your question at the Q&A box so that after 2 minutes, we will be back for the Q&A. Sir Ron, please stay. Or you can, of course, have a bite of sandwich beside you if you have something.
No. I'm good. I'm good.
And we will be entertaining all the questions. The most questions that would be coming here we'll try to do that. So thank you. You are being funded now with appreciation. Don't you go away. We'll be right back. We promise.
Okay, cool.